Hello, this is Christian. In this video, we'll be talking about the include and require constructs in PHP. So when you want to import an external file into another file, you will use the include or the require statements. And to do that, you basically issue the include command followed by a quotation marks, either single quote or double quote, doesn't matter, and include in there the file name that you want to include. Again, these are just language constructs, so they're not functions. So that means you don't have to use the parentheses. Those are completely optional. So the include and require, they do the same job. They're including the code into your another code. Now, be careful about this thing called the variable scope, because the code that is inside this external file will inherit this variable scope, meaning if you include the file in a function, then the code, if you have any variables or the function inside the external file, will be local to that function. So be really careful with that because you can include files anywhere in your code. Okay, so the include function or construct will cause a warning, will issue a warning if, let's just say, the file you're trying to include doesn't exist, if it can find it, right? And it just issues a warning, but the rest of the code will continue to execute. So that means it's not gonna crash or stop your code from running. The require, however, causes a fatal error. That means it will halt the program from execution at that point. So that is the difference between the two. So you can kind of have an idea of which one to use. If something is really important and you want to halt the program because something is really required, it's not there because it will cause a completely different output, then you will use require. If it's just something that is not really that critical, then include will be fine. Okay, so you can also use the include once and require once to prevent any duplicate file inclusions. So you do exactly the same you do with the include. The difference between the include once and require once is that you may have a duplicate in the inclusion. You might include like the file one twice. If you do that, then you run into the issue of overlapping or have a conflict with a variable that has been declared twice or more. So that is really important. So it's always safe sometimes to use the include once to prevent that from happening. All right, let's go and see how this is done in PHP. Back here in the IDE, I'm going to create something a little bit more meaningful now because the include and construct statements are really important, and there are pretty much what you'll use a lot in your PHP code to break out your code into external files and import them back together, or I like to use the term to stitch them together. Okay, and this is one of the powerful features in PHP, to include these files. And so let's just say that I'm going to create a website. Okay, I'm going to go into another directory and make something a little bit more meaningful here. And I'm going to call this like the, my site or something. Okay, so inside my site, I will create a index file. This will be my home page, for example. Okay, the index of my home page. Inside here, I will create another one. Maybe, so usually when you include something like this, you will follow this pattern. You'll create another directory called includes. Okay, this folder will include all your inclusions in here. And usually you have a folder for images, CSS, and JavaScript, and so forth, right? So the same idea here. So put all your includes inside the includes folder. Some people use the ANC for that. It doesn't really matter. I can call it whatever you want, but they should be in a meaningful directory. So inside here, then, I'm going to create a file, a couple of files, maybe just 3 files. One, when you build your site, is usually you use the header for your function, right? Your site. So you can use like header, or some people like to use inc header like this, include header like that. If that's something meaningful, you can do that. And just make sure they are PHP files. And then, as you can see, I have one here. I can create another one here for maybe the include of the footer. Okay, and then I have one more for something else that you want to include. Maybe something like the body of the site here. So I have the header, the footer, and the body content. Now this index here will be treated just like a template, right? Just a blueprint of my file, what it should look like. And so here then inside the code, let me just go this. And so at the top of the page, well, let me do this first. Let me go and then create another file, the HTML file, so we can grab all these stuff here. I'm going to call it index for now. Let's call it template or temp. Okay, so this is your normal website, right? You have your header area. This is the heading, if you want to call that, and this is your body the content, and then you have inside the body a footer. Okay, so the idea is to break this out into multiple external files, so that if you create another file called the About page, you don't have to recreate this over and over again. You just include that into your file and you're done, right? So the idea is, okay, I'm going to use this. If I were to build my site, I would do something like this. So here could be my header here. And then inside header, I have my logo and stuff. Inside here, I have my main content. So you have like a main tag. Okay. And then inside the main tag, I have like paragraph, maybe like H2. And then I'll say something like, welcome to my site. Okay, and then the body of the content goes in here like P, and then this is a story about me, right? And then it goes on however you want to design the site. In the header section, usually you put like a logo, right? You can put image, put logo here. I don't have an image, but just say I have logo dot PNG, and then I have some maybe heading text here as well to say my site, okay, about my site in the heading section. So if I do that, and then the title will be my site, and I might have like JavaScript or CSS in the head section here. Okay, so, and then down here at the bottom, outside of the main, I might have a footer, and that would say something like copyright, not at symbol, would be the ampersand copy, and then 2019, and all rights reserved. Christian, her, something like that, okay? And so this is your site, right? If you were to load this on the browser, and you will see that it should look something, well, not that one, but like that. Okay, of course, I don't have the logo here, so you can see what the logo should have been. And for simplicity's sake, I'm going to remove the logo so I don't have that ugly image there. So then if I say this is my site, I can, style it what I want, and so on. So this is the heading, and then the body, and then the footer. So I have three parts here. So that's the idea of building a site. So now if you want to make this into a PHP file, you would break this part maybe like from here, the body, okay, maybe all the way to the header, right? Maybe from here, this whole part, copy this, put that inside the header in here. It's just plain HTML. It doesn't have to be PHP code, but it's still going to be a .php file. So you save that in here. This is the header part. It's going to be the same for every site. For example, if this is different, then you can break this out into another external file called the title page or something, right? But I'm going to make it very simple here. So this is the header, and then go back. Then this is going to be the main content. So put that inside my main or the body. Okay, put that in here. That's all it contains. And then the last piece is from here all the way to the end. So I'll use this as the footer. It'll be the same for every page from here on. So I'm just breaking out my entire site into three different pieces. Okay, this is the plan here. So now if I go back to my code, then I have this order. On the very top here, I'm going to include, okay, the header, right? Inside the include folder, so I put includes here / header. This is the header file. Inside the header, after that, I have the inclusion for the body, right? The body content, and then I have the inclusion for, I'll do once later, for the footer. So there's my site. So this template here is done. This is the index page of my website. Okay, if I save this and run this on the browser, you'll see that it should look very similar to my other page, right? If I run this side by side, so you can see the difference is exactly identical. One is a plain HTML. This is a temp HTML file. As you can see, this is a PHP file, and the result is exactly the same. If I do a source view of both files, you see they should look very identical as well. Okay, it's almost it's undistinguishable. All right, so that is the idea of using the inclusion and include required to include files into another file so that we achieve this result. Now, what is the benefit of this? Well, a lot. The benefit is now you are separating all your files into their own separate files, so you have complete control of each area. And also, if there's an error in your code somewhere, you don't have to scroll down this big page and find what the error is. You know exactly that, okay, I'm going to check the head section. Maybe that the tag is incorrect. If you forgot to close this, for example, if I do this, if I save this and run my page like this, you see that something is wrong maybe. Of course, you don't see there, but if you were to pass it to the validation, it's going to fail. And so you know exactly what that's occurred, and you go back here and fix that page here. Okay, so this is how you do inclusion here. Now, what if I do like this? If I do it 2 times, what happens if I do that? Like if I do like that? Okay, I have the head and head section twice down here, and if I view my page again, you see that it will show up twice, right? Of course, the browser is pretty smart, so it will just render it. But then really, it shouldn't be doing that. But PHP doesn't really care in this case, right? Because you're the programmer, you have control of this, you should fix it. And the issue becomes a problem when, again, this is not ideal. I'm going to move it back. I'll show you what happens when you need to use the include once or prevent that from happening if you have double declaration of variables. So let's say that inside the head section, I'm going to go to the header file. Up here in the code somewhere, I have a variable, right? I can use my PHP tag and in PHP mode. Okay. One thing I also want to mention that we go back to this index file. Right now I'm inside the PHP mode. Okay. I'm including this file. So once I include here, what actually happens behind the scene is that PHP will exit out of the PHP mode and go into HTML mode. Okay, so which is why you see here, when I go to this file, it's going to be in HTML mode, and that's why if anything that you need to be in HTML or PHP mode, you have to put the PHP tags this way to make it work. So that means all of this is not going to be in PHP mode. It's going to be defaulted back to plain HTML mode. So when you go in and out like this, you don't see it, but behind the scene, that's what happens. Okay. So now back in here then, if I were to create a variable, let's just say the name of my site, the title here, right? So I could say something like title is equal to my site. Put an exclamation mark to make it a little bit different. And I can include that in here now because it's a variable. So I use the expression, right? And then just put title here. And that will display the result of the value here in the title page. So if I save that, and I didn't make any changes anywhere else, if I go back to my browser and refresh it, you see it works just fine, right? No problem. In my source code, it just looks seamless and flawless, just like before, right? Title's here. I could put in a title here too if I want to. I didn't do that, but you could. So that is perfectly fine. Now, what happens when I do in this case, it's okay. It's fine because this is just a variable name. I can declare using another variable is no problem. Because if I were to do this, let's just say twice. Okay, if I do that, if I save it, and if I go back and run the page, you see that you have displayed that twice, right? No problem. Now, the problem occurs when I have a function, especially a function that has been declared twice. So let's say instead of just a plain title here, I want to use a function to return the title page. So up here, I would do something like this, function get title, okay? And then inside here, I put the function title here and just return title. Okay, return that title back. Okay, and then I close my function. Then to get the title here, I would just say the function call get title. Okay, you call that there. You can put that if you want. You don't have to. I think it should be fine. So if I run this, and just to make sure it does work, I'm going to put in both places, up here and also in the title page. Okay. It didn't do it. I'm going to copy this and paste it right in here. Okay. So save that and run my browser. Okay. So you see that has an error. So now you notice that it's a redeclare title previously declared in this location at line 6. That's what you're gonna get, because when I do inclusion twice like this, I include it once and I include it again. So when I do that, I have 2 copies of this file. That means I have 2 functions with the same name. Okay, so that's not allowed in PHP. So this is the same as saying if I do something like this, right? It can't happen like this, right? So you cannot have 2 titles of the function the same name and the same namespace, the same area, which is why it's important to use the include once, just to make sure that I might have included already, but I'm going to call only once. Okay, so you saw the error there, and as you can see, again, has an error because I already declared that. So now to solve this problem, then you would use include once. Okay, use that. And again, you have to use in both cases. If you don't, it's going to include that too. So if I save that and run my code, you can see I still get the same error, right? So if I do both of them, you see that I do it 2 times, but now it should be okay, because it doesn't load the second one anymore. It will run the first ones, and the second time you do include, if it will check for that file. If it's already been loaded, then it's going to ignore the second time around, so you don't have this conflict. All right, so the require does the same thing. So the difference between the include and require is the error. So let's just say that in this part, I'm going to remove one of them. This part, I'm going to go back to just the include and require. I'll make this the include, and this is the require, because the require of the body is important, right? So if I save this, if I load my page, I mean, it's fine. Nothing changes. It's pretty same as usual, normal, right? Because it's required. Now, if I go back and say that if I, mistyped the header and I happen to put like headers instead of header, okay, if I save that and load my browser, not this one, the other one, okay, load my browser again, okay, so you get a message. It's a warning, right? It says include file headers failed to open stream. That means the file is not found. Okay, so you cannot find the file, so you only get a warning. But you still see that the site still continues on, right? It still continue on. Now I don't have the title here. My title is gone. My site is gone because it couldn't find that, so you have an error. But that's all it is. The file still goes. Okay. Now what happens if I do that with the body? Again, if I put, like, for example, mistype body with 2 Y's. Okay. If I save that and then reload my page, you see that now my site crashes and nothing gets displayed at that point. Well, maybe because, it stops there, so you can see that the footer does not get displayed. Whereas the previous one, you actually saw the body of the content of the body and the footer displays. But now, because it's a fatal error, it crashes the page, and therefore it cannot be displayed. So this is something that you want to take into consideration when you put these into your in-live production. Something that is really, really critical, that is required. It must have it before, in order for your site to work, to function normally. You must put it using require, otherwise you might have an unexpected result or on the user side. But you also want to make sure that this doesn't occur when you load on the production side. So you would test all this fully before you run it. Okay, so that is the difference between the two. So let's talk about the variable scope. I'm going to go back and fix this. Okay, so the variable scope. So notice again, inside the header, I have a function called, title. And then inside the body, I have, let's see, how can I do this? So the title, okay, the title is inside here. Let's say I have another function. Instead of get title, I have a function to say init for initialization. Okay, and I will initialize that here, and then I would do something like maybe that should have occurred. Let's see, what can I do with this initialization function here? Well, let's just do a really simple demonstration only to show you. So let's just say that in the initialization function, I have a variable called year, and this will be like 2019. Okay, 2019. I set that to that year, and that's just all I'm doing, right? And so I can then go ahead and maybe like display or return year, right? Return. I shouldn't be returning anything. I'm just going to say for simplicity, echo year. Okay, and this function will be invoked, let's say down here in the section down here in the head section, in the header. So I put here in H2, H3, and I put here init. Okay, so when I do that, it's going to, well, actually inside expression. My expression is a function call only. So, okay, so I'm going to print the year to this location. And if you run this in a browser, okay, so you see the year 2019 is there, right? Because of its initialization here. Now, if I happen to, let's just say this is a variable that is coming from another file. I could create another file here and include, and I'll call it, just put a year, inc, and I put that variable right in there. So if I go here and put this variable, okay, copy that out, put it in the year, okay, this is just, I put it here, I save that, and I include that file back in here. So I can do include, and then the include, and then just year because it's in the same location, include year. Okay, so that means that variable should come into this location and the year will be available even though it is not available here. So if I save this, and we'll change the value to something else, we'll change it to like 2020. Okay, save that, and we'll see if it will show 2020 in the code here. Okay, so let's run in the browser, and I'm going to refresh the page. So you can see that right, so it prints 2020 as you can see here. Okay, so it does work. Now, this is what happens when you include in the wrong place. So because I put it here, it's exactly the same as I have the variable right in here. If I put this outside of this function, like out here somewhere, then now it has a different scope. Okay, so now this variable is no longer accessible inside here, so year will be undefined in this case. So if I save this, and back to my browser and refresh it, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so you see that the undefined variable year, because it's now in the wrong place. Okay, so be careful when you include files. Wherever you include any variables inside here, I'm just having one here. It could be a list of functions and other variables. So it will be scoped into wherever it's been declared. In this case, it's in the global space. So in PHP, you cannot include global variable inside another function inside here. If you want to make that available, you have to go put the global and then put year here. If you do that, then I think that should be fine, because now I'm making this global variable from here, and just to make sure that it does work, you put like back to 2019. So this is how you would resolve this issue. I mean, just one way. There's a lot of ways to do it. So you can see it comes back to 2019 because once I include this here, the variable year, it lives outside the function. I make that local inside here, and then now I can access it directly from here.